Today, I wanted to discuss Empire of the Vampire by Jay Kristoff. Don't mind my shirt collar, I messed up when I was making it, but it's so comfy, I'm just gonna go with it. His previous series, The Nevernight Chronicles, has proven to me he knows how to write a tight book with rich characters and reflect on some heavier things like morality without getting overly saccharine or maudlin, which is an impressive feat. When I first came across Empire of the Vampire, my first thought was, vampires? Oh, no thank you. I haven't seen a book that interested me about vampires in a long time. Topping off at 879 pages, I held my nose against the vampires and I hoped Jay would come up with something that was unique and had something to say. I think he accomplished that. Last night I was about halfway through the book, and literally did not sleep until I finished it. Reading another 400 pages at 4 in the morning is a really bad habit and I don't recommend, but I'm glad Jay made me do it. I won't get into real spoilers for this review, but let's get into it. First, a quick summary from 10,000 Feet. We open on Gabriel de Leon, a defeated man awaiting execution in prison. He's the last of the Silver Saints, whatever that means. He's the seemingly last defense against entire vampire domination. He's forced by his vampire captor to tell his story. The backdrop of this world is medieval fantasy, with some added single-shot pistols. The world is definitely a dark one, but yet somehow not crushingly so. Gabriel's inner strength and refusal to give up somehow inspires, even when he's bleeding and grimy and his friends are around him being torn apart to shreds. I don't know how that works, but it works. Jay works with the standard tropes of vampires for most of the part. The blood-sucking creatures that are immortal, weak to silver, running water, and crucially, they're weak to true faith. We follow Gabriel through his deeds and watch as the lines of love, addiction, heroism are all blurred until we're forced to consider the question, what is sin after all? One big thing about the Empire of Vampire I really wanted to highlight is Jay's use of the frame story. Frame stories are a literary device where a story is told within a story. It's stories all the way down. In this case, Gabriel is the narrator telling his vampire captor all about his life. Some of my favorite movies are frame stories. The Princess Bride, Amadeus, Forrest Gump. While those stories are fairly recent, frame stories are not a new device. They've been used since the Odyssey, through 1001 Arabian Nights and Frankenstein. I love this device so much because it can still feel fresh despite its long history. For the writers out there, keep in mind a good frame story is only going to be as good as the writing. This device works so well for me because it innately embeds different elements that the reader might be interested in. Let's break that down. A good framing story gives the reader space to think about the following. How did we get here? The 90s movie trope of,
this is his story. Well, actually my story. That's right, I'm that llama.
That's a frame story. It doesn't age too well with a few standout exceptions, but it's strong because the narrator is telling the story after living it. Because the narrator is telling the story where they know the end, the story comes with an inherent mystery of how did we get from there to here. The writing really needs to be sharp. If you don't have the character grow or reveal some bigger world around them, this mystery can fizzle out to not be impactful. Another thing we consider is who is telling the story. Having a character inside of a story tell the story makes for a great unreliable narrator. This can be used to great effect to warp or distort, which adds greater mystery. This piece, done well, does a lot of lifting for the writer. The reader is actively thinking about a character's background through their words and are tracking their progress. Unlike a third-person omniscient view, where the reader will take most things at face value. How should we, the reader, react to this story? Because frame stories inherently bring a dialogue, the narrator and an audience, you can gauge the reaction from those listeners to emphasize the pieces that the writer really wanted to hammer home.
Hold it, hold it. Are you trying to trick me? Is this a kissing book?
Used poorly, this can be a crutch. It's tough to be immersed when you're directly being signaled, this story should be impressive, this story should be sad. Okay, back to the review. An obvious comparison of fantasy books that use a frame story is The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. While Rothfuss's prose is more poetic and brings a nostalgic glow for quotes past, it strips away some of the opportunity to talk about bigger concepts. As I've said in other videos, I like fantasy for the metaphor it brings to explore bigger ideas, not just for the pretty pictures it makes in your head. I think Jay would agree. He even tips his hat to Rothfuss with a quick discussion about how Gabriel won his magical talking sword. So you sexed some deadly fey queen so expertly she passed out and... Fuck's sake, grow up, will you? Really, Pat, what was that all about? So here, I prefer Jay's voice. You follow Gabriel's journey to truly understand how he goes from this naive farm boy to a true warrior monk to embittered, defeated bastard. Well, a little spoiler there. He's always been the bastard. But he feels real. His faith feels real, the world feels real, and the stakes feel real. Moving to one of the weaker parts for me, most of the action scenes fell flat. They were repetitive. Gabriel would rush in, he would throw his silver bombs,
Lightning bolt! Sleep! Lightning bolt! Lightning bolt! Sleep! Lightning bolt!
get beat up a bunch, but still eke out a victory. Because he's the narrator telling the story, we already know he's going to win those fights. However, the sword fights are not really the important part of the story anyway. The inner struggles about morality is where Jay really shines. And this is an odd thing to say about a story I really liked. I feel that it was too successful at addressing the mysteries that it posed to entice me towards the next book. I'll absolutely read the rest of the series when it comes out, but I didn't walk away with a list of things I was really unsure about. The main action Gabriel is known for, killing the Forever King, I don't know that I care about it. Jay gives a great setup for why Gabriel would kill him, and I know he does it, so the details of how he does it don't interest me as much. I would give Empire of the Vampire a 4.5 out of 5 stars.